Hello, Dragon Ball Super family. I'm Legends Michael Carrick, and I am bringing you my first post A17 ban list Invoker deck list that I used in Gencon Day 2. I finished at 14th, so top 16th placing. I definitely could have won all my matches, I just misplayed, and this deck definitely rewards perfect play and punishes mistakes. So I've definitely got a lot of room to grow with this deck, and that's super exciting to me. But welcome to yet another Invoker deck profile, brought to you by Team Foe X PPG. The matchups I lost were going on the play versus Gamma, Team Moore's Jared Lopez. I definitely sided poorly for the matchup, and that cost me. And then the other matchup I lost was versus Yellow Trunks in the last round. I made a horrible misplay, and that cost me the game dearly. But both matchups were very definitely winnable, and I look forward to trying to play this deck again in the future. So let's hop right into the deck profile. It's your Son Goku leader. If you're watching this deck profile, I imagine you know what this leader does. I'm going to try to skip over some of the tips and hints that I usually go over. If you want to see those, style back in on some of our older Team Foe XPBG Invoker deck profiles. Definitely spend a lot of time on these tips and tricks along the way. So nothing new changes with the leader. Into the deck, I'll first start off by talking about the fact that this deck is now 54 cards. It is way too easy to deck out in this deck now, even by like turn 5 or 6, because we're just flying through the deck so fast. So I had to bump it to 54 to give myself an extra turn, a turn 6, in case I can't kill on 5, which is often the case, and you kind of rely on Apex to Fu Shrouded Mystery your opponent, so they have to give you another turn to try to kill them with. So anyway, we're back up to 54 now. We play 4 top copies of Top still. This is still the card you want in your opening hand. This is your primary mulligan card. Your other mulligan card you're looking for is a mono blue card. And then after that, you're looking for Tyranny's Costs. When we get to that card, I will go over why that's so important. Senzu Bean, 4 copies of it. You still need 2 copies on your kill turn to really create a really deadly, uninteractable kill turn. Um, I would try to limit your use of them throughout the game so that you make sure you're able to have 2 by the time you get to turn 5 or whatever turn you choose to kill. Of course, every extra energy that you have past 5, and if you are unawakened, that costs you 1 less bean to use. So that's something also to keep in mind. 4 copies of Dimension Magic. This remains unchanged. This deck lives and dies on the fact that it has energy to defend with. So, still 4 copies of that. And then, of course, 4 copies of Zeno Super Combo Edge of Space. Zeno Edge of Space, a lot less necessary now that Android 17 costs a red and a blue. It was absolutely needed when Android 17 only costed a blue. That way you can pick up your mono blue energy and you can put down a multicolor to trigger Android 17. The only reason why I'm still running Zeno anymore at this point is that Zeno is equal to 20k combo power at the on like turns that your opponent are going all in. This weekend I comboed out of a 75k leader swing, and I also comboed out of a Mira Champa swing using 0 Death Beam simply because I had Zeno super combos available. Zeno also allows you to charge your win cons earlier and your rival seekers for energy, and then pick them up later when you absolutely need them. So that's one way you can use Zeno to get out of really tall attacks. Usually you rely on that by using your activate battle on your leader. Of course, you're unawakened first, so you'll cycle a card to give your leader 5k, then you awaken to make your base 20k for that attack. You'll add 3 extra cards back to your hand. You'll Zeno up all the battle cards that you need to combo out with and replace them with the extra cards that you added back to your hand. That way you can literally use your Zenos like 20k for 0 combo power. Or 20k for 0 energy combo power most of the time if you're using Rival Seekers in conjunction. You can get absurd numbers. The max combo power, I think it's like 140k in this deck. So you can definitely bait people to go all in with their leader or a unison because they think it's safe, and then you reduce their hand to shambles. And a lot of time when they're doing that, they use their super combos to cycle away defensive tools, so it makes your kill turn afterwards way easier. That's definitely a trick I used a lot this weekend, and it saved me a lot. Into our Scry package, or so I call it. There's 4 Emperor Death Beams. It's one of the 4 cards. I guess I'll move it out of the light. Sorry about that. Um, there's no way to really keep this out of the light. I'm sorry. It's like right overhead. but it's 4 Emperor's Death Beams. Uh, they're still absolutely necessary. They're definitely the best Scry card in the deck. Um, I'm looking for 4 championship ones. If anybody's selling them, let me know. But nothing much more to be said about Death Beams. Just keep track of how many you have available to you. I wouldn't rely on your leader to add them back unless you're in a dire situation. So definitely the last card I would cycle if you had to pick between anything else. 4 copies of Royal Condemnation is just the next most useful card, Scry card in the deck. This one is a free Scry. However, since Android 17 persists until your kill turn, you kind of want to keep one copy in your hand to prevent stuff like Freeze a Charismatic Villain and etc. from preventing your kill turn in case you don't actually have access to Apex or you're already awakened. 2 copies of Explosive Demon Wave. This is the card that makes us so strong into blue. It lets us bypass Hatch even without Apex and Power. It lets us bypass the Gamma Topo card. It lets us get past right post into yellow in case we don't have Apex available on our kill turn. Really strong card. Many times in this deck I considered playing 3 copies of this and 1 copy the Catastrophic Blow, but it's really whatever you feel comfortable with. By the time you're at your kill turn, you're going to have at least access to 1 of these in your warp. 2 copies of Catastrophic Blow. It's just there in case you need it. If you just need to burn for 1, a lot of people forget that you can burn for 1 a lot earlier in this deck now. So they'll on their turn 3 they'll push and they'll push and they'll push and they'll push to 1, and then you'll go into your 4 and you'll just tap 3 for Android and 1 to burn them out. So that's a really sneaky way to kill them. I like to keep 2 for those hyper aggro decks that do randomly still run amok. Also, some people just like to take their own life, like Crit Doc. Those are decks you can just beat really early because you keep copies of this card in your deck. I also still do play 1 copy of Energy Explosion, so it's a sneaky 2 damage if you need out of nowhere. I bumped Tyranny's cost up to 3 copies now. I desperately needed to find a turn 2 play, especially since our hands gets whittled down now in the mid game. So Tyranny's cost is actually a really good turn 2 play, especially because now we have more combo power available in the deck. So regardless of most matchups, I will slam Tyranny's cost if I have it on 2. I do mulligan for this card. Like if I have top, obviously you mulligan for this card, but even if you don't have top but you have a copy of this card in your hand, I would keep this and then mulligan the other 5 away to find top, just so that you have a solid turn 2 play to keep yourself in the game. It's also really good turn 4. After you, like if you have Android going to your turn, you can Tyranny's cost, snap it off, fix your hand. It's also good on turn 3 so that you can snap off a play and then keep 1 energy up. Tyranny's cost is really good in this deck now. Helps keep your hand up, reduces your opponent's hand size, and it just helps fill the graveyard with cards for Apex. Ooh. Still 4 copies of Sleepy Boy Technique. This card is still unbelievably good. Even with Android being nerfed, you can definitely resolve 4 copies in a game. On turn 3, if you choose to tap out with Android, there's so many ways to untap your energy. You get access to the Sleepy Boy. Turn 4, once you have Android live, there are other tricks in this deck that give you more energy to use Sleepy Boy with. This is probably the most broken card in this deck, and it's the reason why Android was nerfed. I actually think Android would be really balanced if this card didn't exist. 2 copies of Combination Attack. This card is really good versus like Turles in the yellow decks like Trunks and Drip Coup. It's oddly really good versus Gamma because they on 2, if you're on the draw and they play the dual attacker, you can just leave 2 energy up and then you can bounce their dual attacker back to the hand after you cycle a card for free. So that's really useful in reducing their pressure. Versus U7, the other meta deck, it bounces away the Frieza, of course, which is super relevant because they only get 1 attack off of it and it's limit 1, so they can't replay it anyway. It's definitely a card that I never sided out. I never wish I had more, but I would consider siding a 3rd now that I've seen more of the meta. I would probably only side the 3rd into Gamma since the dual attacker is actually a really consistent threat versus this deck. 2 copies of Instinctive Reprisal. It's just another negate that you can add back with your leader. It's a negate that you can rely on in case you're in a pinch. It's a good turn 2 negate versus like super aggro decks. So like if you're on the play versus really strong, because they can start playing the dual attackers or they can play the crit androids. So you can negate one of them and reduce the power of the leader and the other one. Buys you a whole turn on turn 2 and 3. 1 copy of Wearing This Together. This is probably the worst card in the deck right now. You can't even activate this card on 3 anymore with the Android. This card's probably the only reason I'm even considering sideboarding SSB Vegeta for Invoker. But realistically, this card's just here, so on turn 2, if you cycle this card, you can add it back to your hand for a quick +1. It's a good way to spend an energy before you awaken. And on turn 4, if you manage to live there versus an aggro deck, you can tap 3 for your Android and then activate this for 1 energy and clear the field, and then use your other tricks to get your mana back up to try to defend your life. This card's really not that great anymore. I sided it out almost every game. Unfortunately, it's like an emergency card you have to keep in your deck, especially if you're on the play. It's strong into yellow because they can generate a couple of Vegetas and maybe your Turtles that you negated in the prior turns, and then you get to your turn 4 before they do, so that you can tap out, clear their field, and they have to spend too much energy to redevelop a field, and you swing the game too quickly. This is my newest addition to the deck and why we're at 54. This is one of my ways to combat the 3 energy nerf to Android 17. So for those who don't know, I haven't played Phantom Fist in this deck in like 2 years, but it's got Energy Exhaust, red blue multicolor extra card. Its activate main is at the start of your opponent's turn, you'll choose up to one of their battle cards, not ignoring Barrier, and you reduce it by 15k power. Then you'll switch one of your red or blue energy to active mode. So alone, it's actually kind of a doggy effect. You'll probably never tap 2 for it unless you're going against U7 and you're on the draw. So they'll go on their turn 2 and they'll slam an Android 17 on the field and a Frieza, and then they'll pass to you, and you for your 2 energy, instead of playing Tyranny's Cost and dying, you can activate this card. You go to their turn, you'll clear off you'll attack with your leader to force them to waste a 5k defending their Android, and then you'll activate this card for 2, clearing the Android at the start of their turn and getting one of your energy back up to try to defend the rest of your life. So that's like the only scenario where I can really think of you activating this on 2. Otherwise, it's used on turn 4 more often. It's got a permanent attached to it that if you have 4 more energy, you can activate this card without paying its energy cost by discarding a red card instead. That's really cool because you can discard the Android 17 and then activate the Android 17, or you can discard any like Scry spell and then activate it for free. And then so like you'll tap 3 for your Android 17, have 1 energy up. You go to your opponent's turn, and this will give you a second energy up without having to rely on a Bean or D magic, giving you immediate access to like Sleepy Boy or Royal Condemnation for your opponent's turn. That's really cool. It's also of course scryable since it's a red blue extra card, and given that it's an extra card, you can just cycle it if you see it too early in a useless matchup. It's definitely one of my favorite cards in this deck. I can't see myself playing more of it, because it's really just there to facilitate your turn 4, make sure you get to your turn 5 by giving you that 1 extra energy. Sometimes you use it to really like kill nothing just to get the energy back. As neg as that sounds, like half the cards in your deck don't really do anything, so you can just happily discard them to the drop area to get the energy up. It's also the other reason why I bumped Tyranny's Cost to 3, so that you can resolve 1 on turn 2 or 3, so you have extra cards to be able to discard with Phantom Fist on 4. Into the battle card package, we're still playing all 4 copies of Android 17, most valuable player, and the reason why we stuck with this over Vegeta is just because it's a 0 for 5k combo. That's irreplaceable in this deck. Having combo power, it's just so hard to get out of 15k attacks or 15k crits that people leave it all. I mean, the rule versus Invoker is either to leave your attack at 15k or go all the way up to 25k. Because if you just leave it at 20k, they rival seeker it or they Zeno combo, like super combo out of it, right? Whether that be Beerus, Zeno, Zamasu, whatever they're playing. But now you can't just leave your attacks at 15k at 25k because we can combo this Android off with it, and then now it's in our yard to use for its effects later in the game. Rival Seeker still at 4. That's a given. The card's really ridiculous. 2 copies of Son Goku Instant Surpass. Probably still our main win con. I end most games with this. I don't think I've actually victory struck somebody for a game in a long time. I did once at Gencon, but all my other games I just won with Son Goku Instant Surpass. 1 copy of Ultra Instinct Son Goku Energy Explosion for those decks that do take themselves to 4 or need to be at 4 when they awaken. This is actually really good versus like Dripku, who has tools like Release from Evil or Final Flash to stop your infinite attacker. You resolve Apex, then you resolve this dude. You burn him for 2, and then you just pass turn. They have no way to clear this because it's an active mode, and they can't use any battle card effects or unison card effects. You negate all of their attacks, so they can't use Goku Black's Kamehameha to tap. So they can't use like a combination of Power the Super Saiyan plus Goku Black's Kamehameha to clear this card. And then once it goes back to your turn, you use your leader effect, pick up your catastrophic blow, and burn for the last 2 life. And it's a very uninteractable end to the game. So that's super exciting. Other than that matchup, it's very like niche or rogue matchups that also take themselves to 4. Otherwise, you're going to be siding this card out a lot and just relying on these 2 to end the game. And then, of course, what I consider to be the best SC on the game, Son Goku, Apex, and Vegeta, Apex of Power. It still works like a Fu Shroud in a Mystery. Like I said, it rarely victory strikes your opponent to death, but most of the time, just turning off your opponent's abilities for 2 turns in a row, yours and your opponent's, is more than enough to seal the victory. I don't know what else I can say about this card. It's also got a beautiful art, so like I get to play with one of my favorite cards in the game. But yeah, that's a main 54 card deck for Invoker. It's definitely still a very powerful deck, but as I remarked to my friends and teammates, I definitely have to be performing perfectly with this deck to succeed with it, and that is while that is both like stressful, it is also and challenging. It is also just like such a thrill to be playing this deck when I get the chance. Um, but yeah, we'll quickly go through the side deck. It's changed a little bit since the last time I played this deck competitively. We have two copies of Violent Rays. This is for really just sell, or not, sorry, I'm sorry. The cell in the Gamma deck and the dual attacker, you can name battle cards or view they minus their unison. It's a one like a two card one negate for two cards to stop the unison from attacking twice, so that's really useful. It's also good versus yellow because you can call their battle cards or you can call their unisons. And then I wouldn't really put it in for the U7 deck because by the time they hit you with an 8 drop, you've already lost the game. I would rather just use Dirty Burst in that scenario. I sided two copies of Son Goku in close quarters, but now that I've had a little bit more experience with this meta, with this deck, I realized I should really only side one. They'll really only commit the 3 energy for Slug or Son Goku once per game, and if they commit it for Slug, you can just Android and then use Death Beam to kill the Slug, so Slug's really not a problem. This card's really there to kill Son Goku Annihilator, or if they go Annihilator, whatever SS3 Son Goku Annihilation or something like that, or if they go all in on the Trunks thinking the berry's going to save them and you've used all your beans and Zenos and D magics, then you can access this card to snipe a Trunks really quickly. I would only side one more in the future. Two copies of Korin Sensu Beans. This was my misside into Gamma. So I thought Gamma would be killing me with their cells or the dual attackers, the tall battle cards. Now I realize that's really silly because tall battle cards are terrible versus Invoker. You just death beam them all. However, if you I got flooded with a bunch of little 15k attackers and it just forced me to burn through all my beans so that my kill turn was super awkward. Korin's Tower's Secret Medicine effectively adds more Sensu Beans to your deck. Buys you extra turns. It's effectively a better floodgate. The other option is Protector of the People, but Protector of the People costs 2 cards and locks you out of your combo step for that first hit. At least Corn gets you in your combo step and lets you cycle another card. Put a copy of Jiren Survival of the Fittest. For obvious reasons, it's just there to beat Android 17. I really wish Bandai would just ban Android 17 so that everybody could stop siding one random card for one card in the game. Two copies of Dirty Burst. Once again, this is just your U7 side deck card. You can go into U7 turn 3 or 4, their turn 4 or 5, whatever, and you can leave 2 or 3 energy up. You don't even have to tap down for Android, and you just leave this card up. And now they have to focus on using little dudes in which you can use Corn Tower Sense of Being to get out of their attacks. It's also okay into Cell, but I really don't think Gamma, if they're a good player, is going to play Cell into you, simply just because it gets Death Beam for free, and that would just be a terrible choice. One copy of We Are Universe 7. This is my respect card to hand control. On the off chance that they snipe the Apex out of my hand, I want to have another way to get it back. So this is the way to get it back. There's nothing else to say about that. Ultra Instinct Son Goku Energy Explosions. So when I go into those decks, I have that awaken at 4 or less life. I go ahead and just take out my Instinct Surpass and swap it in for Energy Explosions for my Wincon. Because now I no longer have to kill them in one turn. Like I said, Apex gives you 2 turns effectively. It buys you your turn and your opponent's turn. So you just slam this guy on the field, burn him for 2, pass. They'll pass back because they can't kill you through Apex's blanket effect. And then you'll just burn him for 2 again. And it's a super easy game. Another copy of We're in This Together. I said how terrible this card is, but this is my other hand control respect card. If you're facing against like a heavy hand control deck, you just keep discarding this card and paying 1 red to add it back, and they've made no progress while you're continuously cycling through your deck on your turn. Beerus Ball is my other green respect card, and it lets you get past Charismatic Villain without having Android up. There are like very niche other matchups where it's useful, but it's really just for Charismatic Villain. Versus 15k Swingers, I'm fairly certain this probably is very useful versus Gamma. Now I think about it, because you can like when they pay their 1 blue to play the dude or anything, or whatever they choose to play, you can Beerus Ball. Even if you can't hit it, you gain the 5k for the turn, so it's once again another bean. And this one you can just Sparking as long as you have 4 or less life. And then my strategies of Universe 7 is like another copy of Apex. It just covers my battle cards as they try to push through Blue Unison on my Infinite Attacker. That is my latest Invoker deck profile for this post-Android 17 nerf format. I, once again, loved playing this deck. It was equally as challenging as it was stressful, and I live to play Dragon Ball like that in this game. So, if you have any questions about it, as always, feel free to PM me. I love talking to every one of you and meeting all of y'all events. Shout out to Team Foe and my crew that came up to Gencon with me. It was super fun competing alongside all of you, and I hope to see every one of you at Nationals.